If you have 20 pounds to lose by summer, you don't need the same advice you've heard 1,000 times. Just eat less, move more. If that were enough, you wouldn't be watching this. This video is the exact system. Every step laid out in the order you need it, from setting your target all the way through to what you do the week after you hit it. And yes, most fat loss content gives you tips. This gives you a process. My name is Adam. I'm a performance nutritionist who's helped over 200 men lose fat and keep it off. I'm going to give you what works and skip over the hype. Before anything else, let's check whether your goal is actually set up to succeed. In theory, yes, losing a pound of fat requires roughly a 3,500 calorie deficit. And 20 pounds is around 70,000 calories in total. But don't let this discourage you. This is there to stop you underestimating how long it could actually take. So if you've got 12 weeks, hitting 20 pounds would require a 800 to 900 calorie deficit per day. In my opinion, that's doable. If you weigh 230, that's around a 25% calorie deficit. But reality plays out a bit differently. Initially, you'll lose a lot more because it's fat and it's also water. Then you have individual differences in muscle and life in general, all which affect the amount of calories you burn daily. So that could skew your timeline. And obviously people weigh more, people weigh less. But it could take you 8 to 12 weeks if you're dialed in. Of course, you could go a lot slower and you could go a lot faster. But just so we're on the same page, we are talking about 20 pounds of mostly fat by the summer. Let's face it, most men start a diet with one goal: lose the weight. And sure, that works for around 3 weeks, but then you're hit with a long week at work, a holiday, a weekend, or just a Thursday. And the goal becomes less important. It's just less relevant at that moment of time. And influencers will tell you the problem is discipline, and the internet will tell you, most sources will tell you the problem is discipline, especially if you Google or whatever. But that's neither true nor helpful. Think about it. Lose 20 pounds doesn't connect to anything that actually matters. Well, matters enough, that is. And I've helped men who tracked every calorie, trained consistently, lost the weight, aborted the mission, and then put it all back within 6 months. This wasn't because they just stopped knowing what to do. They knew what to do. They had already did it. But this was because the goal ran out and the number was hit. And there was nothing underneath this number. There was nothing holding it together. But what actually does hold it together is identity, not the outcome. You have to ask yourself, who are you becoming through this process? Lighter is a number with no depth. What does that even mean? I'm talking about the kind of person who trains because it's what they do. The kind of person who eats well most of the time because that's just how they eat now. And now when that identity shifts, the behaviors start following it rather than resisting it. So before you go any further, write this down. I'm becoming the kind of person who, and finish that sentence with something that's actually true to your life. And not abs or a scale number, but something real, something meaningful. Now you've got the identity, you need to make it concrete. So write it in terms of present tense, even if you don't fully believe it yet. I'm someone who lifts 3 days a week and plans my food in advance. Then underneath it, list 3 things that version of you does on a normal weekday. Lifts, hits their protein target, gets in enough steps, and that's it. Everything else in this video is about making those behaviors harder to miss than to hit. Now, I will tell you from decades of experience, every diet that's ever worked has done one thing. It created a calorie deficit over time. Keto, low fat, low carb, intermittent fasting, hand portions, intuitive eating. The label doesn't matter. What matters is whether the approach produces a deficit you can sustain without consistently starting over. And my recommendation, based on what I've seen work and based on what the research says, over and over again. Track your calories and protein for at least, at the very least, the first 4 to 6 weeks, and weigh your food accurately when you can. I suggest the whole time, but at least that time period. And sure, this is not exciting, but here's why it's worth doing at the start. Most men just dramatically underestimate what they're eating. And that's fine, that's normal. This isn't because they lie. It's because they've never actually had accurate feedback. Tracking is calorie literacy training. You do it for a phase, it's not for life. You learn what meals actually cost you. Then after a while, you learn to eyeball. If tracking feels completely unworkable, like for whatever reason, use a portion approach. Roughly a palm or two sized portion of protein, about, I would say, 2 fists of veg, then a cupped handful of carbs. That could be, I suggest, fibrous carbs, and then about a thumb of fat per meal. So if you do all that per meal, you're going to be in a good place. Then you can just adjust based on what the scale does over the 2 to 3 week period. What most people miss is a method is secondary, but consistency across the 8 to 12 weeks, that is what matters. Here's a starting point that works for most men. Take your body weight in pounds and multiply it by 15. That's your maintenance. Well, a rough estimate if you're moderately active. Then subtract 20 to 15% from that. And then you've got a meaningful deficit. For protein, somewhere between 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of your body weight daily. That's where the research consistently lands for exercising adults. Practically, I would suggest, if you want to just get the number and be done with it, is do around a gram per pound of your goal body weight, especially if you've got quite a bit of fat to lose. It's a straightforward way to hit the upper end of the range. So if you weigh 180 pounds and you want to get to 160, you might set calories to, let's say, 1800 to 2000 to start with, and 160 grams of protein. Then you let carbs and fats fill the rest based on what you actually enjoy eating and what's going to be realistic. These numbers, they're not magic. They're a starting prescription. You'll know within 2 to 3 weeks whether you need to adjust them. So there's a piece of research that hasn't got nearly enough attention in the fat loss content. A study tracking people through a 12-week fat loss program found that people who lost the most, they weren't the ones with the most complex plans. They were the ones who ate the same foods more often, more repetition, less variety, more predictable weeks. And that probably sounds boring. Yeah, maybe it is, but it's also extremely effective. Your hunger, your decision making, and your adherence all gets a lot easier when each meal's not a creative exercise, especially at nighttime. So having a small rotation of meals you know can work, that you can build automatically. This removes friction at exactly the moments when you have the least energy to deal with it. I suggest 2 to 3 go-to breakfasts, 3 to 5 lunches and dinners on rotation, but building every meal around a protein and fiber anchor. And no, this is not about meal prep every Sunday becoming a personality trait that you post about on Instagram. But it's not making the same decision from scratch at 7 p.m. when you're already tired. So that version of your diet that works in a clean, structured week isn't the version that matters. The version that matters is what happens when it isn't. Let's say you have a late finish, a client dinner, or just a weekend away. The week your schedule falls apart, that's when most people lose a month of progress. But here's what I have every client do before they start. Make 3 lists. The first is the places you'll inevitably end up when you can't control what's on the menu. Think of your regular chains, the service station, or maybe your office canteen. For each one, pick 1 or 2 options that are protein centric and roughly fit your numbers. With this, you don't need to think on the day. Your decision has already been made. Now, the second is what I call convenience meals. Things you can pull together from literally any supermarket in around 5 minutes. Maybe some deli chicken, a high protein yogurt, and some fruit. Even a pre-prep salad with some protein on top. it's very likely that none of this excites you. But again, it's extremely effective. Now, the third is your home emergency rotation. Think of the meals you can make in 10 minutes or maybe even less when the fridge is like half empty. Eggs, frozen veg, microwavable rice, tinned fish. This is a list that stops a bad day from turning into a bad week. Remember, the point isn't to cover every scenario, it's to make the question, do I stick to the plan? Almost trivial, because there's always a plan. So if you want to lose 20 pounds, look and feel your best, which I'm pretty sure you do. You need to make sure you're actually just losing fat. And the research here is more encouraging than most people expect. You can maintain or even gain muscle with surprisingly low training volumes, as long as you're pushing those sets close to failure. We're not talking about 6 days in the gym. If I'm giving like you practical advice, it can be a lot less than this, but I'd say 3 solid sessions per week is enough to hold or even build muscle while you're in a deficit. For most men watching this, that's 3 full body sessions a week, hitting the major muscle groups with 8 to 12 weekly sets spread out over those 3 days. If you can do 4 to 5 days, an upper lower split or some hybrid version of a push pull legs, this gives you more frequency and a better chance to actually spread your volume. And a few things that matter more than a specific program, most of your sets need to be in the 6 to 15 rep range. This is not exclusive, but just gives you less room to kind of overthink. With 1 to 2 reps in reserve for the majority of your sets. You don't have to grind to failure every set of every session. You want to prioritize compound movements like a press variation, a row, a squat variation, a hinge variation. The specific lifts matter far less than the fact you're actually loading the patterns consistently. And please don't confuse variety with progress. The men I've seen get the best results over a sustained cut are the ones who actually stick to the same program and track whether they're getting stronger, not the ones swapping out exercises just because they're bored. Okay, so one of the more counterintuitive findings from the fat loss research is that when people lose weight, they naturally start moving less. We're not talking in the gym, but we're talking outside it. They start fidgeting less, take the lift instead of the stairs, and start sitting still for longer. And this can quietly reduce your daily energy expenditure by several hundred calories without you even noticing, which narrows the deficit you work to create. But the fix isn't more cardio. It's about protecting your daily movement. You want to set a step target you can realistically hit on most days. Let's say 7 to 10,000. That's a good target for most people. Then if you have the time and you're recovering fine, 1 to 2 cardio sessions per week, just anything you don't actually dread. This will help support your cardiovascular health and give you a bit more food flexibility. Think of it as like keeping your week a bit more honest, but not compensating for what you ate. Okay, so you need to know if this is actually all working. So remember, those short-term scale fluctuations are almost entirely water and gut content. You can overeat calories by 3,000, gain 2 to even 5 pounds overnight, and lose it all again by Thursday. None of that is fat movement, but what you need to know is when you judge weekly progress by a single morning weigh-in, it's like checking the forecast once and packing for the entire holiday. But you do want to weigh yourself daily if you can. Look at the weekly average. That's your data. If the 7-day average is dropping by roughly about 0.5% to 1% of your body weight per week, the system is working. And outside of the scale, waist circumference and photos every 2 weeks, alongside tracking how your main lifts are holding up. Those 3 together tell you more than a scale alone. If your weekly average hasn't shifted for like, let's say 2 to 3 consecutive weeks, your waist and your photos look the same, something needs to change. That usually means trimming calories by 100 or 150 per day, or maybe a bit more daily movement if you don't want to eat even less. But it doesn't mean starting over. And you don't need to spend Sunday afternoon batch cooking meals to make this work. Cook double portions of dinners and eat last night's dinners for today's lunch. You can pre-cook like 2 protein sources in bulk at the start of the week, like chicken and maybe some lean mince, maybe some fish, mix and match from there. Keep a rotation of 10-minute meals for the nights when you have nothing left. And the goal is to make your default choice the easy choice, not to make your kitchen some production facility. The more friction you remove from eating well on a normal day, the less willpower you're burning through on a Wednesday evening. So the research on what keeps people training consistently points to 3 things. Feeling like you chose the plan, feeling like you're getting better at it, and having people around you who actually care whether you show up. Most accountability structures get one of those, but you want all 3. Track your wins, no matter how small. Log your training. Tick off days you hit your protein. Note one thing from each week that's improving outside of the scale. You need evidence that it's working, and the scale doesn't always provide that fast enough. Remember, you will only put the effort in if you know you're getting results. So find one person who will actually show up. Maybe a training partner, a coach, someone in a group who you can share check-ins with. This is not to motivate you, but to make skipping feel slightly more awkward than actually showing up. And then frame even minimal effort as a win. A short session you didn't feel like doing is not a cop-out. It's evidence the identity you're building is real. And this is the part almost no fat loss content addresses, which is partly why so many men end up getting lean, but then back where they started within 6 months. During a weight loss phase, your metabolism becomes more efficient, ever so slightly, but it does. Your resting energy expenditure drops, your body moves less without you even realizing it, and if your goal is hit and you immediately eat the way you used to, that's going to be tricky. Your hunger hormones are going to be elevated, and it's just going to be way more difficult to stay full. This is physiology 101. No amount of fasts here will save you. And even people coming off GLP-1s or GLP-3s get hit hard here. So there's no winning it, there's just planning for it. So when you get to your goal, don't just flip the switch and relax and be like, oh yeah, I deserve this, I need some rewards. Work out your maintenance over a week or 2. Just stay there. I suggest even longer for some people, but you want to watch your average weight and your waist. See what it does. Keep your protein the same, lifting with the same volume, keep the exact same foods with a little bit more flexibility. Remember the habits that got you there: training consistently, eating mostly whole foods, keeping up your movement. These are the same habits that will keep you there. Maintenance isn't the end of the process. It's just a quieter phase of it. If you're listening to this, you're serious about your goals. I mean, you've got this far. Now you have a system, not some made up shortcut or some comprehensive protocol that just wastes your time because it's a lie and unnecessary. You have what it takes to lose 20 pounds by the summer and actually keep it off. And if you keep this system up, you'll lose even more. Now, if you really want to make sure you nail this, you need to be able to manage hunger. This video right here will show you the #1 thing that most men skip when losing fat. I'll see you there.